Hi, I'm Holly Kulf. I am the chairperson for the 33rd annual Spring Garden Tour, and unfortunately this year we had to cancel the garden tour. However, to continue with the tradition of having garden tours, we're doing video tours. We are sponsored by, this year, the Scenic Cities Beautiful, and we're very thankful for their continued sponsorship. Today I'm here with Florrye Grant, and thank you, Florrye. We're going to tour her beautiful garden, but before we do that, I just want to have a few minutes with Florrye to talk about herself and her garden. And first of all, I want to introduce her as a master gardener. And Florrye, how long have you been a master gardener?
Years I've been a master gardener.
Okay. How long have you lived in this house?
We bought this house in 2012. I didn't start gardening in this house though until 2015. When we bought the property, all of this was privet hedge and scrub trees, so we took out 10 truckfuls of trees. My husband cut trees for 2 years. That's why I didn't even start planting until 2015. And so I have tried to use some natives because of course they're easy, but I mainly look for shade lovers. If it's a shade lover, then I love it too, so that's what I use.
Do you look for plants that are going to bloom, or do you look for foliage, or both?
Both, yeah. Like for the oak leaf hydrangeas, I love the blooms, but mainly I love that big leaf, which gives a nice contrast to the smaller things in front. I plant those toward the back of the garden.
We're ready.
This is of course, a cryptomeria. It's just a little ball-shaped one, but Ralph Summers with Rare Trees gave me that, and I love it because it's growing a little bit every year, but it's just such a pretty little green plant. This is a Phlox, and in the fall the leaves turn orange. It has a kind of a nondescript bloom in the spring, but what you grow it for is that beautiful orange foliage in the fall. The daylilies, I think I already mentioned, I love. And of course this is another one, the kaleidoscope abelias. This is a spirea that has a variegated leaf on it. It's a beautiful kind of a magenta bloom, and that was from my mom's place, so it's kind of special to me. Got several peonies in here scattered throughout, some iris scattered throughout both sides, and one or two small azaleas, which were not doing very well in their first home, so I gave them a new home. They say every plant has to be moved 3 times before it finds its right home. So my husband says all of mine have to be moved 3 times. There's a hydrangea over here. It hasn't bloomed this year. I think I must not have cut it back in time. And I did plant liatris, which some people call blazing star, behind my daylilies because I like the orange with the purple behind it. I think it makes a nice backdrop. They're good companion plants. This is a dawn redwood, and actually when I went to a garden tour in the spring of 2014, there was this person who had a conifer garden, and so she had a dawn redwood and it had some little babies underneath it. And so she gave me, in a styrofoam cup, this dawn redwood seedling, and it has grown that much in 6 years. It's a beautiful tree. It loses the leaves in the winter, so you see the form of it. But the foliage is soft, and it's just, I love the green, and I think it's going to take over the yard eventually. But it's a fast-growing tree which was extinct, and about 75 years ago, I think, they found one in China, and so it's coming back. On the front edge of this garden, these are Linton roses, Hellebores, and they're one of my favorites because they bloom in the winter. They start blooming in like January when nothing else is blooming, and those blooms stay on there really until they die back and I cut them off. But that's a nice plant for the shade. Also impatiens, of course, just for a little color because it's hard to get color in the shade. This, of course, is hydrangea, and I've forgotten the name of it, but it has a beautiful flower, and it will bloom in the shade. And then the ferns, these are autumn ferns, which are just beautiful in the shade. They love it. Okay, another one of the hydrangeas. Back there I've got some variegated Solomon seal. That's a shade lover. Has a pretty little white bell-shaped bloom that forms in the spring underneath the... Okay, this is wild ginger right around the shepherd's hooks where sometimes I put bird feed, but the squirrels seem to love it so much that I don't really have anything but hostas. This is a pulmonaria, which has a beautiful, beautiful bloom in the spring, kind of a blue with pink, and it's just a gorgeous, gorgeous thing when it's blooming. It's done really well for me. It is a shade lover. Okay, now we have some more really double daylilies that came from joiners, of course, and they are just, I love that one. It's just a great daylily. And it's partial shade, I guess, but it's still blooming anyway. Maybe if you tell a plant you love it enough, it will produce for you. And then I've got, this is a pink hydrangea, but it's probably too shady for that. More Asiatic lilies, which were beautiful when they bloomed. This, of course, is Mahomia holly. I have to prune it back every year, but the birds love the berries on that, so I keep it for them. And you'll notice back behind there, I have planted all along in front of the fence skip laurels, and they're doing really well. But then in front of them, I've put variegated Acuba, and that loves the shade. It's a great shade plant. And so that gives me a little light spot of bright in front of that dark. I like that to try to break up the shade. And the little bird bath was my great aunt's. That's a real antique, but I thought I was going to have to patch it, but it has a little crack, but it's holding water. So that's kind of special for me, with ferns and hostas around it. This is a different type of a Linton rose, and it has a bloom that comes up on a spike. I bought that at the Nashville Garden Fair one year, and I really like it just because it's different from the other Linton roses. And then if you notice back in front of that Acuba, there's some Sedum. That's Autumn Joy. I found out it grows well in the shade, and it will bloom, so it will it'll take over. It becomes invasive, so I pulled up a lot of that. That is Allium, where the little berries are. Now, I've just learned this year, it has a beautiful kind of a heart-shaped leaf, and I grew it for the leaf. And then it'll have a trumpet kind of flower come up, and then these berries will turn red, so it's very unusual. However, the sap is poisonous. I didn't know that when I planted it, but my sister said, you know, you gave me some of that, and I broke out in an allergy when I started messing with it, so I'm not sure about using allium, especially not if you have children. It's kind of a silvery looking leaf. That is Brunei, and it's a beautiful, beautiful plant. It spreads easily. I started that from one little small pot. It has a bright blue bloom that comes up on a spoke in the spring, and it just stands out. It's just gorgeous. I've got lots of bulbs planted in here too, and this is a ground cover azalea. I've forgotten, it starts with a K, the name that they start with, but they love the shade, and it has spread from just a small plant. Actually, I brought it from our home back in Dalton, and it has spread over these 5 years to where I've got that, and I've got several starts of it back over there too. So it's beautiful. It blooms one time, but it's really nice. These are white iris, kind of ruffly iris. Love them. That's a steep slope, so I try to section it off with rocks when I come across rocks, just so that I'll remember to be careful walking back there, because it is very steep. There's lots still of that little ground cover that's everywhere. You can't get rid of it, so you might as well learn to live with it. More of the variegated Solomon seal, which is a wonderful, wonderful shade lover. Then I planted some caladiums here just to give me some white. I needed the brightness. here, it is hard to get brightness in shade. So that's why I like the Acuba, I like the Brunei, I like the Caladiums, just because of giving me the brightness. This is a fern. I don't remember what. I planted it the first year we moved here. So it's been here a long time. This is Stokes Aster. I brought this from my mom's house in Savannah. Actually, it is invasive up here. I have to pull it up by the buckets full. But I love the little blue flower. There are not many things that have blue flowers, and so it's a great, great plant to have, sun or shade. I think it grows anywhere. This is an Azalea. It was in the sun. It bloomed better in the sun, of course, but I needed to move it out of my way. It has a pretty pink bloom. Most Azaleas have white blooms, but I love this because of that little pink bloom on it. Right behind, down here, this is a bleeding heart. It's done with its blooms for this year, but it's a great shade plant, or I don't know if it would grow in the sun or not. I just threw some sedum down in this slope just because I want to fill it up with something. And then I've got impatiens planted also on the slope. But you can see how I've kind of designated the slope with rocks, just big rocks, because I think that suits a woodland garden. This is where we started planting just hollies in front of the fence here. Got a few iris in here. This is, of course, an oak leaf hydrangea. And these will be sunflowers when they bloom. Back here, these are fake hollies. And I love them. I think they're just, they are there year round, and they'll stay green most of the year. And then that's a dry creek bed that we've put, because all the water from the neighbors and from our yard comes through here. And we have a rushing river when there's a big rain. Again, I put Stokes or Stokes Aster in the center island there by the crepe myrtle tree. Down here, these are lilies of the valley. They love it right there. They're great shade lovers also. I put another oak leaf over there, so it's just beginning, really. I planted it this spring. It did bloom. I have a sweet little hummingbird iron thing that Jack Towns did. I bought that at the garden fair one year. The Garden Expo, which, let me plug the Garden Expo. That is a great place to get plants, to get hardscape. It's just an awesome thing. Beside that is a gold wild azalea. And when it blooms, it is just a sight to behold. It is just full of gold blooms. It's so pretty. And all around it, these are ostrich ferns. Thanks to Mike Payne. He gave me 2 or 3 one time at the garden tour. And I planted them, and they love it. They are just great, great ferns for a moist place. Okay, this is a Bluebird House. Thanks to Carlton Mathis, I know a little bit about bluebirds, and I've had, I think, 3 hatches this year out of this and one other house that I have. You'll notice the little feeder on the side. That's where I put mealworms for him. And so that little bluebird, the daddy bluebird, I think he likes the nest because he keeps coming in and out. The babies are gone, but he loves it, so it's his home. There's some little bunnies down beneath some of the ostrich ferns. You know, hardscape is really important in a garden. You notice I've got a gazing ball back there. It's just, I don't know, it just pulls the eye to a certain place, and I think it's really important to have hardscape throughout your garden. These are encore azaleas, autumn embers. They're orange, bright orange, so they bloom in the spring and again then in the fall. So that's kind of a nice spot of color. These are just little small white azaleas that only bloom in the spring. And that's an astilbe back there with the little plume on it sticking up. And it is in the middle of some other ferns, which I don't know what the name of those ferns are, but they're really prolific in the woods. Great shade lovers. These are back here, a couple of wild azaleas. I really want to promote wild azaleas in this area. So I've got some red ones, some pink ones, yellow ones. They're just really beginning well. So it'll take them a couple of years to reach the height of the gold one. These are hostas, and they're blooming right now. After the blooms die down, I'll cut those stalks out because I really grow them, and most people do grow hostas for the greenery, the beautiful leaves, and just the foliage. But they're great for shade. They are natural shade lovers, hostas are. Back there you'll see an Amaryllis in a pot, which had a beautiful, gorgeous, kind of a salmon color bloom back in February. I leave my Amaryllis out in pots during the summer, then I bring them in the fall. They die down, and then all of a sudden in the winter, the foliage just starts coming back. It's awesome. I love that plant because winter blooms are hard to find. This is another Astilbe, which is finished blooming. In those pots, those are Agapanthus. And actually, I got mad at those Agapanthus. They were crowded in a pot, and last fall I thought, you know, they haven't bloomed in a year or two. I'm going to put them in the compost pile. So I did. And they just would not give up. They wanted to live. So this really just a couple of weeks ago, I thought, you know, anything that's trying that hard deserves a chance. So I put some of them back in pots. I put some of them in the garden because they had multiplied in the compost pile. So it's crazy. Anyway, back there are some oak leaf hydrangeas, of course, and I'm getting a good start with those. Here's a hardscape. It's the top of an old bird bath. I just put it out there. I let the water get in it. The birds love it still, so I'm keeping that for my birds. Okay. This is a celandine poppy. It's a bright yellow bloom. It blooms early in the spring when nothing else really is blooming out here. It has spread and gotten really big because it started as a small little container plant, and it's a shade lover, celandine poppies. This is a neat little spot with Japanese sword ferns and hellebores and hostas at the back. Had to cut a few trees out from here to make room for those, but this shovel died, so we just made that a part of the hardscape. And you'll notice an old tree root with moss on it. I think that's kind of neat in a garden, just to see how things really grow. I outlined this bed all the way around with boxwoods. And then, of course, some more amaryllis. The little seating area here, eating area. I filled pots with hostas, different kinds of hostas, because they are so easy. And then also Hucheras toward the back, and backed it up with an oak leaf hydrangea. I noticed there's a Caladium coming up in with that Huchera. I did have Caladiums in there one year, so that one wanted to come back. This is a beautiful Huchera here. It has a red leaf. I think it's called Southern Comfort. Bought that from Sylvia Jarrett at the Garden Fair Garden Expo one year. It's a great, great Huchera. This is, both of these are larger hostas. This one is the larger one. This is smaller, of course. But any hosta that has the name Guacamole in it is going to be that type of a green leaf, kind of a yellow-green. Then I want to take you back here to show you something every garden needs. I mean, we're master gardeners. So this is my compost pile. And I find great dirt in my compost pile. I dig underneath, but I put my vegetable scraps in there. I put my flower cuttings in there, anything I cut off of my plants. And when I turn it over, the bud teaches us all in master gardening, but I keep my little pick right here. And I might, if I want some dirt, I just go down in here and I find some good dirt and I use it. So I recommend anybody who's really gardening, have a compost pile. Make use of those things. Nature gives it to us. And then there's another Dahlia. I've got phlox growing. This is a balloon flower. I usually pick off the dead ones, but didn't get to that this morning. But the little buds look like balloons that haven't been blown up, and so they're pretty neat. But I love this plant. Some bloom flowers stay down close to the ground. This particular one grows up tall. This is a beautiful daylily that a friend gave me, and actually her parents hybridized daylilies and lived in Knoxville, and so I treasure that as a gift from a friend. Beautiful daylily back there. That's a double red with a yellow throat. And these are phlox, which they're just so gorgeous. They just give that spot of color in a garden that everybody needs.
Florrye, I want to thank you very much for showing us this lovely garden. And while it rains on us, I just want to say I am very, very impressed that you know the names of most of your plants. I can't even begin to tell you how often I forget the names of my plants. So this has been wonderful, and I'm looking forward to seeing this video on our website and all together and showing it to people.
Well, good. Thank you. Welcome anytime. I love to show my garden. It's my passion.
All right. Well, it's been wonderful. And again, I want to thank Scenic Cities Beautiful for being a sponsor of the tour, and looking forward to seeing it online. Thank you.